Roll Jam on Z104.5 The Edge, Tulsa's rock alternative.
So last week, if you were tuned into the Morning Edge, you know that we had our buddy who is way better dressed and way smarter than me and Chuck up here. His name is James Wirth. He is a lawyer. He is basically, he's the guy that you want to always have in your speed dial, okay? Because you never know exactly what's going to go down in your life, and you go, oh, crap, I should have totally had a lawyer on my phone. Well, guess what? James is here. Now, while you may not have him in your phone, you do have him on your radio, and he is here to answer all of your law questions. Hello, James.
Hello.
You don't seem really excited to be there. Come on, James. Are you excited to wake up this early in the morning and answer anonymous questions from Edge listeners?
I'm always excited to answer questions. Put them on the radio is just that much better, I guess.
All right.
We should also mention, too,
What?
MakeLawEasy.com. That's where you want to go if you do not get a hold of them today.
MakeLawEasy.com.
Yeah, real easy.
Okay, Oscar writes in, James, when can we legally start to smoke and purchase marijuana in Tulsa? Of course, it's going to be that every time.
Well, yeah, I was going to say, I can't believe we haven't gotten this yet.
But this guy does, have kind of a point where there's a whole lot of stuff out in the media about it. And he said, I'm looking for sort of an exact date.
Yeah, and unfortunately, we're looking for an exact date in the least exact area of the law right now. There's a lot of things going on. This is not something that I practice in regularly, but there are some other attorneys that I've spoke with, and there's lots of questions that we're getting on this. Essentially, it's still illegal under federal law, and that causes a lot of complications. There's still a lot of people in the system, in the government, that have concerns about it. So we see city council meetings and laws being passed in municipalities regarding zoning restrictions, and that makes all of this very indefinite. So we've got one doctor, I think, that was on the news this morning that is opening up and allowing prescriptions. But there's still complications for growers where they can't import from outside of the state. By the law, everything's got to be inside of Oklahoma. Okay. We don't want to disturb interstate commerce and get involved in federal issues.
Right.
So where do you get your seeds to start growing? That's an issue. Where do you go to where you don't have concerns that the city's not going to put zoning requirements that's going to cause you to be out?
Sure.
So a lot of companies are investing a lot of money in this, and there's still a lot of risk. And as far as a definitive date, it's just kind of wait and see at this point.
Well, it's funny you said this isn't something I do a lot. I would think nobody in Oklahoma does this a lot right now, but I think a year from now or 2 years from now,
you could be doing it a lot.
It's going to be Better Call Saul all over the place, right?
Yeah.
I mean, a lot of people are going to be doing this.
Yeah, there's actually a few attorneys that are really getting into this, and they haven't been doing it for a long time because it hasn't been an issue for a long time.
Right.
But they're getting into it and doing the best that they can with the legal environment the way it is. Anybody that's got questions about it, you can actually go to my website, MakeLawEasy.com, submit them, and if it's related to marijuana, I can get you a referral.
Colin writes in, maybe the most ridiculous question of the day.
Here we go, Colin.
Although there are no stupid questions, Colin, only kind of vaguely sarcastic answers that James will give you. Colin writes in, if I get pulled over and I immediately tell the cop I don't want to answer any questions, do they have to leave? I've seen a video about this, and I'm very curious.
It's never that simple. Obviously, you want to cooperate with law enforcement to the extent that it makes sense to, and to the extent that they're within the scope of what they can do. So if you're pulled over, there's got to be a basis for that. There should be reasonable suspicion of a traffic offense or something else.
Okay.
So
you can't just say, I want to clam up.
No. Once
me up.
Once they're alleging they have the reasonable suspicion, they're allowed to go far enough to investigate that reasonable suspicion, write a ticket, and then you may be free to go. Typically, what we see is if they want to look into it further, they will write, very common, they will write a warning, not actually a ticket.
Okay.
They will give that to you, give your license back. That way, technically under the law, you're free to go, but you may not know it. Then at that point, they're going to ask you, can I ask you a few additional questions?
Okay.
Okay. And at that point, you're free to go, but they don't tell you that you're free to go necessarily. And then that becomes a consensual encounter at that point.
Is that a good question to ask once they give you the ticket? Am I free to go?
Am I free to go is the question. At that point, they've got to say yes, unless they have something else to hold you on. But sometimes they're going to be waiting for a drug dog to come.
Sure.
And they can use that consensual encounter and questioning to buy enough time for the drug dog to arrive.
Wait, now, okay, let's get into that. Let's get into that a little bit. What about searching a vehicle and, can you refuse? And if they don't really have a reason to search it, they go.
If they say like, "Hey, can you pop the trunk for me?" Can you go? No, I can't pop the trunk for you.
Yeah, you are not required to consent to a search. That said,
I didn't know that.
They may be able to search based on probable cause without your consent. So you're never in a position where you're required to consent to it, but they may be able to do it without your consent.
Can you imagine if they searched my old vehicle, the Jeep? See, I had one that was kind of like a suitcase for me, really. Like everything I really owned was in there at one point or another, and it was stacked up pretty high. I would imagine they'd take one look at that and go, maybe
you're free
not.
to go. We're telling you you're free to go, so please get out. You can ask us anything you want. You can ask James any law-related question. Hit us on Twitter at EdgeTulsa. James's website again?
MakeLawEasy.com.
All right, we will be back with more with James the lawyer here momentarily. We are the Morning Edge, Flaming Lips right now. That's a revivalist right there, and all my friends. New Edge music on Tulsa's Rock Alternative. I'm Josh, he's Chuck. We're the Morning Edge, and on Thursdays, I think we're going to make this a thing. I'm having fun with this.
This is great.
James Wirth, who is an attorney. You can find him all over the interwebs at MakeLawEasy.com. He is here inside the studio answering your questions. Chucky, this is kind of a sad one / sort of funny one.
Yeah, a little bit of both. Okay, so we're going to call him Fred, okay?
Yeah.
Fred says his ex-wife on her weekend moved her and the kids out of the state, and trail's gone. She doesn't have like a regular job. She has kind of one of those jobs you can just do yourself or whatever, and I'm sure she's not paying taxes on it or any of that kind of stuff. So it's a little hard to track her. I mean, at that point, what do you do? Now, this guy says it's been like 6 years.
Full disclosure, I thought we were doing the other one, so I didn't find this one funny at all. Chuck's a terrible person for finding this.
I thought you thought
funny
it was
in the least.
No,
I thought the other one was funny, not this one.
I'm
this
sorry.
one's horribly sad.
Okay.
You're a terrible person.
Either way.
Okay,
what
so
do we
James,
do?
this guy, this lady absconded with this guy's kids. He hasn't seen the kids in like 6 years, he said. 6 years.
Right.
Yeah.
He said he's had a PI on it. Like, nobody can find this lady. What do you do? I mean, this is a parent's worst nightmare.
Yeah, we handle a lot of custody cases, and this is something that frequently comes up. A lot of times people call us right afterwards, and sometimes we hear from it years later. Certainly, it's better if we hear from you right after it happens. He says it was on his weekend, so that makes me think that he had an order in place. So that's good. That can at least keep jurisdiction here in Oklahoma because there's an existing court order.
Okay, because they already have so-and-so gets it this week and so-and-so gets it.
Yeah.
Okay.
So in Oklahoma law, we've got two different things we can do under that scenario. We can file a motion to enforce visitation. That can be good because you can get into court more quickly on it. It's supposed to be set for a hearing within 21 days. And Oklahoma family law courts can take a long time on other things. So if someone comes in and says, they didn't give me visitation last week, something like that, we file a motion to enforce, we get into court more quickly. In this case, where we look like they're absconding, where we want to get a criminal warrant, we're going to want to file a contempt citation and say that she is purposefully violating the court order. That can be sentenced up to 6 months in jail. We talked about it last week related to child support, but you can do it for any type of court order where there is a purposeful violation. And then once we have an order in place, it becomes a warrant in place when he doesn't show to court after he's served. Then it comes down to enforcement.
Okay, so now this is where you and I get involved, I think. Because I believe at this point, then don't you hire like a PI to go find this lady?
Absolutely.
Okay, hold on. We should sell our services right now.
We really need to get in James's good graces. So we have thought about forming a detective team. Josh and the Fat Man.
Now, we really don't have like a lot of experience yet, but we figure if you give us a few cases, I figure it would go pretty well, like Simon and Simon, that old show. I think, where we just
we work cheap too, James.
Right.
So
okay.
How about us as your private investigators from now on?
Yeah, I'll see if I can find some clients willing to test you out.
What is that? I think he just gave us the brush off.
a little bit.
Remember Matlock had that guy that would go around and be like his private investigator?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
That's what we are, except cheaper. And not as good.
You can pay us with Cheetos.
You can pay us in food. I think that would be great. Okay, what's the next one? This is the one I found kind of funny.
Okay, so and we're going to call her Tiffany.
Yeah, she did not want her name
No,
used,
she did not, because she is married right now. And she is not really happy with the marriage. She went into it with a lot more money than the other guy did, and he's pretty much just lazy, does nothing all day. So she's like wanting to get out. But now she realizes they didn't do a prenup or anything like that. Is there anything she can do to try to protect the money that she has, or at least a good sum of it, so he doesn't get all that?
Yeah, so essentially this is a question about divorce planning. And the first thing, as you alluded to, Chuck, we want to talk about is marriage planning. If you've got a lot of assets and you're going into a marriage, that's something to think about ahead of time. Prenups can be done in Oklahoma. Where they're done properly, they can be enforceable. Some states have enforceable post-nuptial agreements. They're not real enforceable here in Oklahoma, so that's not going to be a great option. The other thing is during the marriage, how you treat your assets can be very important. Because ultimately, separate assets that you bring into the marriage, as long as you keep them separate and do not commingle them, they retain that separate property. So even if you're married for 10 years, if you didn't disturb that money, it was just sitting in an account, gaining interest solely in your name, that's still going to be yours when you go through the divorce.
But what if you get married and you go, I love you more than anything. You're my soulmate, and I'm going to spend the rest of my life with you. Let's have a joint bank account, and you commingle all your money.
If you commingle it, you deposit just even your own money that you earned during the marriage. If you earned it, but it's during the marriage, that's marital money. And if you put that into your old account, that transmutates potentially the entire account into marital property subject to an equitable division.
So if you have the money already and you have it in a separate account and you don't touch it, you're good.
Keep it there.
Don't toss other money that that you're married into it. Otherwise, you'd have. I feel like this would be another case where he could also call on his detective agency, and we'd go in, and what we do is we'd launder the money.
That's a good idea.
Is that?
Well, you know what? We probably shouldn't talk about breaking the law in front of the lawyer.
That's not the word we want to use.
Yeah, I can't recommend that.
Josh and the Fat Man are on the case. Just be aware that we are here for you, James Wirth.
Yeah. Can we also retain your services? Because it seems like
you better get me on retainer.
We might want to do that, too.
MakeLawEasy.com is James's website. More law questions answered soon on the Morning Edge.
It hasn't driven right. They say it's not them. What can I do?
It can be difficult. And the thing, if you're calling my office, going to MakeLawEasy.com, then I'm going to look at is what are the damages involved. Sometimes it can be tough when there's not enough damages to make it worthwhile to put in what's necessary.
Gotcha.
Because it can be difficult. Ultimately, it's your burden to show, if you take this to court, that they did something improper, either negligence or a breach of implied warranty or a standard of care for that particular industry. And if you don't have an expert that can review the vehicle, determine what went wrong, then you're not going to have a lot to make your burden of proof.
Ooh, you know what I would do in this situation?
What?
Now, again, I don't like to speak for the lawyer here because I'm not a lawyer.
That's probably a good idea.
But I'd probably tell that client, hey, you should take it to Judge Judy.
No, see,
I hear that Judge Judy, she doesn't put up with anything.
You know, I have a question. So would it be easier to prove something against, like, John's Body Shop or, like, Midas? Or what, you know, like, is a corporation easier to do this with than, you know, like a civilian body shop?
I don't know that it makes a big difference. I think probably a large corporation is more likely to be used to dealing with these issues. They may have counsel ready to go on these types of things. But the main thing is can you find another person to take the vehicle to who can determine the issue and make a report, and then you can use that report if you want to file in small claims or make any kind of claim. But also what I tell people under this, because it doesn't make sense a lot of times to retain an attorney to pay money, you know, pay $1,250, $2,500 retainer if you're out, you know, $500.
Okay.
See?
That's a good idea.
That's why I say Judge Judy is the way to go on this.
No, see, and I was about to say something really nice about James. See, that's why he's not a shyster. He's not like just trying to get your money. He's telling you, hey, maybe this isn't the thing for you.
Sure. So in those cases, we look at, you know, are they listed with the BBB? You want to make a complaint there. Sometimes if you're talking with them and they don't resolve it for you, posting a review online sometimes gets their attention.
Right.
Those are the things you can do on your own for cheap outside of court. Inside of court, on the small claims docket, you know, similar to Judge Judy, but here in Tulsa County or whatever county that you're in, you can do that on your own. A lot of people do that on their own without an attorney.
Okay, so I have a question that is actually for a very, very, very close friend of mine, one of my best friends in the entire world. He went out with a girl, and they went out like, I don't know, a month, I think. And he's been asking me about this lately because I told him last week that we had a lawyer come in, MakeLawEasy.com, by the way, and he's been, I mean, stalked is pretty much the best way of saying it. Every time he posts on Twitter, hey, I'm going to blankety-blank bar tonight. I hope I see everybody. She shows up. She shows up unannounced at his house. She calls him all the time. She emails him all the time. She's constantly like liking or retweeting or whatever, everything on his social media. He has made it very clear that he's not into her.
Oh, and he also, probably shouldn't out this, should I?
No.
Doesn't he kind of work in the same industry we do? So it's not
Yes.
like he can be. It's not like he's just a regular citizen who,
Right.
You know,
He
is
can't
being
just get
stupid
away.
on Facebook and saying, you know, wherever he's going. It's part of his job to say that.
Okay, so the question there would be, what does he do? I mean, it can, like, what is a restraining order, and how does one get one, and how is it in effect, or how is it, done? Like, because a lot of people hear that term all the time.
Sure,
And they
yeah.
go, oh, my ex is crazy. I'm going to get a restraining order. Well, like, what does it mean, really?
Yeah, well, you hear that term thrown around, restraining order, and that comes from popular culture because in California, that sort of thing is called a restraining order. In Oklahoma, a restraining order is something a little bit different. We call it a protective order here. And if there is domestic violence, threats of violence, harassment, or in this person's case, stalking, that is a ground to get a protective order. And that's where you can go into the court initially ex parte, meaning that you go and only one side is heard. The other side doesn't have notice yet. The other side doesn't get to make their response at that time. So you just go in, your side is heard, and the judge can grant it on an emergency basis just based on your testimony. And that would mean that that person would have to stay, 500 feet away from you, away from your home, away from your workplace, whatever the specifics of your circumstances are. And then once it's granted ex parte on an emergency basis, it's set for a show cause hearing about 2 weeks out, where the other side is then served by the sheriff and they have an opportunity to respond.
Okay. So I should tell him to get one of those.
Yes. Well, you should tell him to call me.
Okay,
and then we
right.
can talk about his specifics. We handle a lot of protective orders on both sides. It's something that is very active in the court. That docket is full. So it is something that people deal with, that we help with.
If
Okay.
this person is very loud, can you go? 500 feet's just not enough for this person. They will still interrupt what's going on.
Yeah, see, I've told Chuck this whole story. Like, we've been talking about this forever and ever now. I can't believe I didn't ask you this last week. Does the judge ever say, nah, it doesn't really seem that bad. You're okay. Don't worry about it.
Yes, but more often than not really. They're generally err on the side of caution in granting these things. Has been our experience. They don't want to be the judge that denies one and then
Right.
something
And then
horrible's
something
in the news
happens.
the next
Right.
day.
All right. Well, that makes sense.
Okay, so James's website is makelaweasy.com. I know that last week after he left, we were flooded with calls, and everybody's like, what can I do about blanket? All right, just call him up, okay? Or go to his website, makelaweasy.com. He will be back again next week. We are the Morning Edge, Z104.5. The Edge.